everyone. Good morning, Mr. Kunle. Good morning, Mr. Okechukwu.
Morning.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another exciting edition of the ESQ Practical Lawyers Academy webinar
Morning.
series. Good morning. My name is Chidima Agu, and I'm a research and development staff of ESQ Training Limited. At the ESQ Training Limited, our mission is to expand the frontiers of continuous professional learning. We offer courses and training across various areas of practice, which we have categorized into academies like Litigation and Other Dispute Resolution Academy, Intellectual Property Law Academy, Energy, Oil and Gas Academy, Capital Projects Academy, Capital Markets Academy, Tax Academy, and amongst others. We have tagged this webinar series the Launch Hour webinar series, as they are slated to hold at 1 p.m. during lunch break. They would hold 3 times every week, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And we hold on Fridays by 11 a.m. to accommodate our Muslim participants. And after every session, we'll provide the resources in easily accessible format for everyone who is interested. Currently, registration is still ongoing for our training on PAR. It is a 12-week virtual distance learning course titled The Dynamics of Power Contract Regulation, Contract Negotiation, Documentation, and Project Financing. And it commenced yesterday, it commenced on the 16th, sorry, and you can still register. To get more information, please send a mail to o.solanke@esq-law.com. So the topic for today's webinar is on hot immigration issues faced by HR professionals, and our seasoned facilitators will advise professionals on the new industry trends and skills to flow into the new normal. On the topics of today, we'll be looking at understanding the law regulating employment of foreign experts, identifying hot immigration issues facing HR professionals, outlining tips for dealing with immigration officers as HR professional of a company employing foreign expatriates, identifying how to advertise management on immigration issues arising from employment, and many others. We are privileged this morning to connect with our panel of experts, and if you have any question while this webinar is ongoing, please type them in the Q&A session or raise your hand. It is a great delight that I introduce our chair moderator to this webinar. His name is Kunle Obebe. Mr. Kunle Obebe is recognized as one of the foremost Nigerian lawyers in immigration, employment, and labor matters, and is frequently sought after as local counsel for large international companies. He's a partner at Bloomfield Law Practice. He's a certified global mobility specialist and a regular speaker at the Nigerian and international conferences seminars on regulatory compliance and emerging corporate immigration issues in Nigeria. He's also a member of Executive Leadership Committee of the Worldwide EIC, the Workforce Mobility Association. He has, since 2009, he has recognized in who's the Who Legal Nigeria, and he's highly knowledgeable in commercial litigation and arbitration attacks. A managing partner and chair of the firm's dispute resolution, immigration and tax employment labor practice groups. Mr. Kunle, thank you for being with us today, and it is with this I leave you to moderate this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Chidima, for the kind introduction. I would want to leave Daniel. First of all, introduce Daniel. I'd like Daniel to just do a brief introduction of himself. Then after that, Okechukwu will also do that as well.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi, this is Daniel Mitibemu. I'm an immigration lawyer here in the UK. Can you still hear me?
Yes,
Yes, we can.
hear you clearly.
Okay, yeah, I'm an immigration lawyer here in the UK, and I've been practicing for over 10 years now in the UK immigration law. I specialize in every aspect of immigration, name whatever route. That's my area of specialty. And it's actually a delight for me to be part of the panel today, and I'm hoping to have a good time with you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Daniel. Okechukwu, please, can you just introduce yourself?
Thank you very much. My name is Okechukwu. Hope I can be heard.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, my name is Okechukwu. I work with GLIS and Co. I'm happy to be on the panel this morning. I also advise clients. I advise clients on foreign direct investments, and immigration, even though I spend much of my time, or I would say 80% of my time, I do more of energy and oil and gas. So
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think based on the topic that was given, hot issues, I think the hottest issue that we are currently dealing with is the pandemic. And I just want to have an idea of how, with your conversations with HR professionals, how they've been handling this the pandemic with their expert employees. Okay, Chukwu, you want to kick off on that?
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, yeah, you're very correct to say that maybe the hot issue now is the COVID-19. And the much I can say for a number of clients who I advise currently, I know for most of them, if I may say, most of what I've seen is, for some of these experts, a lot of them had to leave the country. I mean, before the lockdown, a lot of them had to leave. And for the few ones who are around, work, just as expected, work has been very slow. But again, that doesn't, take away the fact that there are still, the requirements, the necessary filings and returns we are required to make in law. The law still requires that you do those. And I also know that there are people, people are still coming in, especially since the relaxation of the lockdown. Foreigners, expatriates are still coming in. There's been renewal of work permits and all those. So I think that is the situation as it is. Not much has changed. Not much has changed, if I may say.
Yeah, thank you so much. Daniel, what have you seen with regards to the pandemic? You mentioned the fact that you cover a lot of areas with regards to immigration. So what have you seen? So not just corporate, I know you would also deal with individual immigration. And I know the UK has been changing regularly. I don't know how you guys keep up with the regulation changes. Can you just give us a brief overview of what you have been seeing?
Okay, it's actually been very interesting due to the pandemic, because before the pandemic, a lot of foreign employees were meant to come into the UK and to start their employment, because once your visa is issued, you'll be given 30 days to come into the UK. So the pandemic actually affected a lot of them. They were unable to come into the UK and they had to be working from home. Of course, let's say, for instance, they're in Nigeria, okay? And apart from that, they had to now submit another application for the replacement of the vignet that they have, their passport, which has already expired, because the pandemic lasted for here in the UK, we are still on national lockdown. It was around April, May, thereabout last year that they released, they opened the border a bit for people to come into the UK. So but about that time, a lot of people, vignet had already expired. Okay, so it was actually so difficult, number one, for the employers themselves, because they wanted the employees to be on ground, to be doing the work. Okay, so we had to, in a way, be calling on the Home Office to make an exception for these guys, because if you're unable to come into the UK within the time frame, your visa will be cancelled automatically, because you are meant to start work at the time that you are meant to do that. Okay, so another thing that we experienced as a result of the COVID-19 or the lockdown is that the individuals themselves, okay, they were panicking. Okay, they were thinking that the employers will change their mind, maybe get someone else to fill in the gap. To take up the employment. So, but with wisdom, we're able to manage that process, and it's been interesting since. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Another thing is the issue of compliance, because I know that because of the pandemic, the fact that a number of individuals had to travel within a very short period due to the pandemic. How have you been advising your clients with regards to compliance, okay, Chukwu? I know you mentioned that things are starting to return back to normal with the lifting of the restrictions in Nigeria. However, how have you been advising your clients with regards to compliance?
Thank you. I think basically from the compliance perspective, again, unlike some other sectors of the economy, like in the banking sector, where you have the regulators quickly come up with issues or regulations with respect to, as it affects their sector because of the changes that has been brought because of the COVID-19. I would say, coming to the immigration, apart from the compliance, the COVID test, the test which employees that, for those who are coming into Nigeria within the period, there's been some, there are requirements to conduct tests, isolate 14 days and stuff like that. But the basic compliance as it relates to expatriates working to Nigeria, namely tax remittances, filing of immigration returns, clients still do that. Clients still do that because the immigration service is still functional, up and functional, even though only very senior staff, come to office, but they are still very functional. So in terms of compliances, yes, they are still doing that. With respect to tax, what has happened is that the states, because of businesses, the businesses having gone down within, a lot of businesses having been affected. So the issue of taxes, some states and even the Federal Inland Revenue has granted extension to companies, extension of time within which to file the relevant tax remittances. But in terms of the immigration returns, expatriate returns and WP returns, which employers are required to file, we've not heard anything from the NIS, that's the Nigerian Immigration Service, either the granting extension or other. So as it stands, we still advise clients, file your monthly returns, file your monthly returns at the NIS, to the NIS, file your taxes. So not really much has changed, as I said earlier.
So with regards to the, Okechukwu, still with you. So with regards to the work from home policy that a lot of companies are currently practicing because of the pandemic, what tips would you have for companies that have expats that are still in the country but have to work from home? Okechukwu. Yeah, I think he froze there. We'll probably give him some time to come back. If I can go back to you, Daniel,
Okay.
The issue of compliance, that's with regards to the various filings that you have to do in the UK. We're looking at it now from the perspective of Nigerians coming to the UK. What advice would you give? What are the things that you feel that they need to watch out for? And what are the things that they may be little things, but they are things that, as you know, would affect the application at the end of the day?
If I understand your question clearly, I'll speak from the perspective of the employer, because the responsibility actually lies with the employer, because the employer is the sponsor of the overseas worker coming from Nigeria. Okay. And there are statutory requirements and responsibilities which they need to fulfill. Okay. Prior to the pandemic, working from home wasn't popular because the employee is actually meant to be physically present in the office building, because the home office compliance officer can turn up at your office unannounced to check whether the employee is working there or not. But because of the pandemic, a lot of the companies, they had to come up with systems whereby they can monitor that their employees are actually working. Okay, what some of my clients, what they've done is to put in a system whereby their employee can log on. Maybe let's say the start time for their work is 9 a.m. Okay, there will be a clocking in time. Okay, and there will be a way for them to monitor their activities throughout the day. And these are the things they report to the sponsorship department of the home office. Okay, to confirm that, okay, this employee is actually, or the migrant is being monitored and they are fulfilling their necessary requirements. So for someone coming from Nigeria to the UK on work platform, what I would advise, because it's a different system, okay, what I would advise them to do is to make sure that they follow the guidance of their employers, because yes, you can say you're working from home and you know, spending some time watching Netflix and all that, but you need to fulfill that requirement, because if that is not, your visa will be curtailed.
So the issue of clocking in and clocking out now, is that a regulation or it's a company policy that a lot of companies follow?
It is not a regulation, but it's a company policy, okay, that needed to, it's like a contingency plan. That wasn't there prior to pandemic, because prior to pandemic, you are meant to be physically present in the office building. Right? Because the home office, they carry out unannounced audits. All right. At the moment now, they can ask the company to email them records of employment activities of an individual. And how would they prove that? Yes, they can submit reports of maybe project delivered by the individual, but they want to see how have they been able to manage the 9 to 5 activities of the individual. So clocking in and out, maybe proof of attending team meetings, those are things that will help.
Well, that's quite interesting, because it's something I think we can also, I think companies can also look at applying here, particularly when you have to prove that an employee, an expatriate employee is working from home. You mentioned the issue of audit. Okay, Chukwu, I know you would have been called a number of times that immigration is currently at your client's office. What do you advise with regards to audits when audits happen? What is your advice to your client?
Well, as much as possible, for just as Daniel mentioned, in the UK, usually in Nigeria is also unannounced, but most times it's physical audits. So you have the immigration guys bump into the office just to be sure that you don't have some foreigners working who do not have the relevant, approvals or the relevant permits needed to work. So usually for clients who are up to date, I mean, usually I advise our clients, try and make sure you're up to date with your filings. Your filings of your returns with the immigration service. I mean, as much as you do that, there's little or nothing to really fear. Really or nothing to fear. Really. But we've not, with the COVID, and just as mentioned, which is still in Nigeria, a lot of offices people are still working from home. I'm sure that also would have impacted the issue of the physical audit, because we've not yet gone so much of a method to be able to audit or send such information online. So usually the audit by the immigration is done physically. And I think that would have been impacted by the COVID, considering that a lot of offices are closed now, and even those open, the operations are more or less skeletal.
So the funny thing is, I still had a couple of clients that were audited, physical audits during the pandemic. Yes. so in a sense, there are still audits ongoing. What I usually advise clients is that they have a record, a file in the office, which has all the work permits, all the monthly returns, all the filings that they've done. So that is kept at the front desk. So anybody comes in at any time, they can just show them that information. And they also keep a record of all audits that are carried out. So you have cases where companies are audited almost once every quarter, which may seem strange, but if you don't keep a record of how many times they've been to your office, you'll be surprised that the immigration service will continue to do that. So another thing that we are seeing with the pandemic is the fact that there's been a lot of termination of employment. That includes with expatriates as well. So from your end, Daniel, how have the companies you've been advising, how have they been able to cope with that? Because you bring in, I know how difficult it is to get a work permit in the UK, and you now find out that maybe the position has become redundant and they have to let the person go. What are the things that the company needs to do to be able to do that?
Okay, well, fortunately, in the UK here, during the pandemic, the government was able to assist the companies, in the sense that employees were put on furlough, whereby they were given the government was paying 80% of their salary. Okay, so there wasn't really too much of redundancy. So because the employers know that the employee's status in the UK is tied to that employment. So once they are made redundant or terminated, means that their visa ends. Okay, so what majority of the companies, my clients, what they've been able to do is to put their employees on follow. Okay, meaning that the government has actually been paying their salary, paying 80% salary for all this. And in fact, it was meant to have ended last year August, but it's been postponed to I think April this year, but depending on how the situation of things with this COVID unfolds. But yeah, so far here in the UK, it's really been manageable.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's interesting. I heard about that, the issue of the follow, and it sounded really alien to me. But okay, Chiku, in Nigeria, how have your clients been coping with employees, expert employees that they need to terminate their employment? Well, what are the steps that you advise them to take?
Well, it's actually been a very difficult one for employers having to terminate expatriates, because when you look at the cost of bringing them in, the procedure, getting the expatriate quota, the high cost of the setback, and the fact that when you terminate, it's more like you're going to start the whole process all over again. So usually we advise clients, if it's absolutely necessary that you have to terminate the employment, usually two options. If you must terminate, make sure it's in accordance with the contract of employment. Look at what the contract of employment provides for, and then as much as possible, make sure the termination, the appropriate notices they are given, and they are necessary. The Nigerian law, we still apply the common law rule, even though there have been counter decisions that affect recently, which is that the employer can always hire and fire. You can always terminate even for reason or for no reason at all, even though that has been questioned in recent decisions of the National Industrial Court. But our advice usually for clients is the contract for skilled labor in Nigeria, employment contract is generally, engagement is usually regulated by your contract, because the Labor Act doesn't apply to such employees. So what we usually advise clients is engage your clients. Everything is actually contractual. If you must terminate, make sure it's in line with the contract. If you also want to contemplate or you want alternative arrangements, always make sure this is agreed, properly documented with the expatriates, right? But more or less, whatever you agree, make sure it is contractual. If you are terminating in accordance with the contract. If you want to apply, because in most cases, nobody anticipated or saw the COVID-19 and the pandemic coming. Nobody saw it coming. And I've not seen a contract, before now that has provision for force majeure, employment contracts with force majeure clause that contemplates the COVID-19 scenario. So usually, as I said earlier, the advice for clients is you must terminate in accordance with the contract. Otherwise, you may have to engage your clients, the employees, and then renegotiate the terms of the engagement. And I think that has worked for a number of them, really.
Okay, that's interesting, because if you look at it from the perspective that so another conundrum that I have seen is the fact that, with our own work permit process, you have to have a local employment contract. But with some companies, these employees are nomads, which means that they travel everywhere. They've been to various jurisdictions. So they have a global contract. So if you are terminating their employment contract in Nigeria, does it affect their global contract? It's an issue that I've raised with a couple of other immigration lawyers, and we just don't seem to know how we resolve it. Because most times what would happen is, not most times, every time, to get a work permit, you need a local employment contract, which is part of the requirements for a long-term work permit. So it's how you are now able to resolve that. Would you now look at their global employment contract to terminate their employment? Or will it be the local contract that will now be terminated, and how you now take it from there? Daniel, what about short-term work permits? I don't know whether you have short-term work permits in the UK. Someone that just wants to come in for maybe 3 to 6 months. How has that been?
Yes. We do have the short-term work permit, and it's actually called the paid engagement visa. Okay, so that you can come into the UK for 3 months, 6 months, just to consult. Okay, on a short-term basis for a company. Okay, and also you can also want to do a 1 year visa, which is the skilled worker visa. Now, you know, initially we had the tier 2 general visa, but that was replaced with the skilled worker visa that actually started this January. Okay, so if someone is coming on a short-term visa for the purpose of employment, they've got two options. Is either to go through the paid engagement route. Okay, just for instance, yourself now, you can decide to say you want to come and consult for a global organization here in the UK, maybe for 2 or 3 months. Okay, so what you need is paid engagement visa, which will allow you to come in, okay, to work for that particular company alone. All right. So you don't necessarily have, because I hear you talking about global contract and all that. Here we don't really practice that. Your contract is tied to one company. Okay. So if your contract is terminated, you need to go and look for another employer. That will be your visa. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. I don't know. Okay, Chuku, with short-term work authorization, that's the temporary work permit. What experiences have you had with the temporary work permit when you're advising your clients? Have there been any issues with regards to that?
I mean, with regards to, if I get you right, the termination of sorts.
Yes, termination and just a general, any other general issue that you've had. I know. Okay, so let me give you a bit of let's look at it from another perspective. The issue of the Nigerian Content Development Monitoring Board, that you need to get a pre-approval from them before you bring in workers in the oil and gas industry. I don't know whether you've had any issues with the local content board.
Okay, with respect to that, I mean, even beyond the local content, but okay, talking about the temporary work arrangements, which is covered by the TWP, usually for, okay, so the process, in terms of determination, I can't really, because usually it's a fixed period, except where the employer wants to extend or the work, because the regulation actually allows you to extend the period, usually for 3 months. With the new visa policy now, you actually could have temporary work permit that also allows you to actually travel in and out of Nigeria, and for up to an extended period, initial period of 6 months, and you can even get it extended up to 2 years. So in terms of, I can't really think of any peculiar, I mean, at the moment, think of any peculiar challenge that you may have to face. But with the national content, I mean, the local content board for the oil and gas sector, of course, the requirements, you have to, I mean, get the approval, right? And also, the only challenge which the COVID has created, just as we mentioned earlier, is the fact that for some employers who may want to terminate at this time, considering the rigors involved in getting these approvals, and also the reports, because when you are engaging them, you are also taking immigration responsibility. The rigors involved getting approvals for those in the oil and gas sector, the local content board. I mean, you don't want to go through a lot of those. But if really it is what you think is financially the best for the company, why not? Again, I can't think of a very much of a peculiar challenge for those with the temporary work permits.
Yeah, so from what I have seen is the fact that the time it takes to obtain the local content board approval has quite increased. It used to be about a week or 2 weeks to get the approval, the pre-approval before, but it's now about maybe 2 to 3 months or even longer. And you can now imagine an issue that arises on an oil rig that you need to fly in engineers to come in and resolve.